What's happening, buddy? This is Hayden Adams, and I've got another video of a website critique. This time it features David, a CS student. And when I look at websites, both under the hood and also visual, I think about three things. One, how does it look? Two, how does it function? And three, how can we improve it? The overall look here looks pretty good, but let's get into the nitty gritty and see if we can find ways to really improve this to make it even stronger. I like the white type and the yellow, a good contrast of colors. The problem is that when we use the yellow in the navigation right here, it's really hard to read the word about. What I'd like to see is on that hover area, let's change the color from white to gray or black to make sure we keep that contrast really strong. The contrast also is a problem. If we scroll down the page, we can see that View My CV, while it looks good on the yellow and purple, really cool design technique there, which I do like. However, the readability falters before I roll my mouse over it. Now, rollovers are okay, but of course, as we go into the mobile version, that there is no rollover area, and so it's even harder to read in theory on my screen. Size to click on is great, and I'm seeing purple, as we can see the GitHub down below, is also clickable. I like to see some kind of change happen just so I know, even though I see the mouse change, I like to see some sort of rollover happen just so I know that this is actually a clickable link going forward. I just change it to a slightly different color of some sort, or even just put an underline in there, old-fashioned style in the GitHub, just so I know I can click it. Do something to tell me that I can just click on this after the rollover happens in terms of GitHub. Coming on the page, my education, my portfolio, looking good. Some photography, looking pretty awesome. And the contact me. You can say name, email, personnel, company, message, and send. Again, with the rollover, I would fix that rollover color from that white type to more of a purple or that dark gray to pull it out. And you have your email address. We've got LinkedIn, GitHub. We are rocking and rolling. Now, if we take a look at it under the hood, here is where I'm really struggling with. Because if we look at it, I'm thinking about H's and paragraphs in my HTML because that leads to more of a stronger CSS style. If we look at it, the word hello is really just a span. In fact, I might just put a span tag up there or a P tag. It doesn't really fit with an H3. In fact, what I even might do with some creative styling is I might put hello, I'm David, all on the H1 and have hello be a span and a block section so you can separate the two lines in the CSS. The reason why this is troublesome is the H1, if we think about it, this is a one-page website. There only should be one H1. So there shouldn't be a class before the H1 in theory because there's only one H1 per page. The navigation looked good above. I was checking it out, looked overall really strong. And if I look at, let's double check this thing, making sure this is not an H1. I wouldn't use an H3. I think about just having text inside the navigation with the paragraph when it comes to a title. In fact, I might even go H2 in that area. But I don't usually use headers inside the nav. I think about the nav just having text in this case. So I might just use the nav P because it's kind of a paragraph area inside that navigational area. There we go. I didn't realize that. But there's a lot of H3s going on that I'm not really quite sure. I think about with design of the H's, they should go in hierarchy in terms of H1, H2, H3. So this is definitely the H1. I would just have this as like a nav or a div with your titles over here. I don't really think about those being paragraphs or H's as I do more of this design over here. That's up to you. It's flexible in the navigation, but when we actually get into the content with I am David over here on the right, now I'm thinking about section, looking really good there. Class welcome, ID welcome, but the welcome ID and the class ID kind of makes me nervous that there's more than one H1 to this page. If we come down to about me, now we get a second H1. I think about H's as hierarchical. So basically I'm thinking about H1, H2. The about me should be an H2 of the title, which is your name. That's how I think about that, which means we can then take out the heading, because in theory, this would be H2 inside of the sections. We could say section H2 over here. CSS looks solid. Color, font size, margin, text align center looking really good here. Take a look at the code over in this area. And you could use an H3 with the word name. I look at this as a list of information though. I don't look at this in terms of headings. I would create this into a ULLI of an unordered list, because you're making a list about yourself: name, qualification, profession, languages. So I would change that into a list and just take the bullet points out, so nothing to worry about there. Look at the CV. It's probably, come back. I meant to just click inspect on this little guy. Buttons are fine. A tags are good, looking sharp. But yeah, we can take out these H3s for ULLIs. That could be just a stronger approach going forward in here. Again, with the hobbies, now we can get into, these should be H3s, because the hobby should be the H3, and this should be either a paragraph or a ULI. In this case, the writing of info, wait a second, what is going on here? Is that a break tag? Oh, don't show me break tags. Now we got a problem here. The reason why this is an issue is break tags should be where you break text, but not a double return. What this really should be is this should be a paragraph tag and not an H3. So if we take it up a second, we should have an H1 sitting right here. We should have an H2 about me, and then an H3 on the word hobbies, where it's just a span tag. I would rather put the H3 because about me hobbies, and then sports, traveling, reading, and writing is where the paragraph comes in, not the H3, and definitely no double break tags. I thought I saw a space in there. You should have paragraph and not H3 double break tags. That's how I would change the font style going on here in this design. Down below, education break. Again, that would definitely be the H3. That looks really good, because if we think about it, my education should be the H2. We know it's going to be probably an H1. Yep, that's where it is. And the education break should be an H3 because it comes down below. 2018, 2020. I could go with that. That looks good there. Overall, this is looking good though. And I like the design of these lines. Again, it's really hard to see the icon with a white color inside a yellow circle. So that does concern me for just a little readability going forward. Coming down again, this should be definitely the H2. Check out my interesting projects. That would be a paragraph, not an H3. You're gonna have a lot of H3s. Kick it back to paragraphs. I think about when I design something, is it a header or is it a paragraph? Now, this kind of looks like a header, but I think about with all the text, it's a paragraph. This is definitely a header going forward. And if you scroll on the page, I will not send a message, but overall, this is looking really good down below. Contact info, contact me. So again, H2 on the contact me. You could have this as an H3. This is where I will allow it in this design, which you do have in this design for the contact info content. Overall, I don't know if I would go contact row, content title for that's a lot of pieces in your CSS going forward. Maybe just have an uppercase class, because in theory, you've already got the designed already within the H3. So the text transform is just the uppercase by itself. It's a lot of unnecessary code because in theory, if I take these pieces out, it just goes away. I should design the H3 all across the board and then have minor changes if need be. But overall, looking at it, it's a really successful and strong one-page website. You have everything else going on. Oh, one more thing I was going to say. Watch how far your text goes across the page. I forgot that one last piece. I think about reader fatigue. it's really hard for our eye to go across the page and then come back after a certain size. Yes, I have my browser pulled up way across the page, but I might do in this design is have a max width just because it's easier to read it. If we go right here, for example, if you look at this and you were to pause the video for a second, you'll notice how much easier this text is just overall to read right here versus if I pull this way across the page and now it becomes so long our eye struggles to get around. I would just maybe move it like 700 pixels width or create a max width. That way it doesn't go so far across the page, and then you could center this if you wanted to sitting on the page as just an idea of the overall design. Don't center the type, but the center the actual content in the middle, or just have it stop at a certain size. Overall, I'm digging this site. It's looking really great. Little few changes to make in the back end, but otherwise really solid portfolio. Awesome.